3, 2, 1. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of CriminalCast. This is episode 10. We've been away for a little while. It's kind of hard to coordinate 4 bodies to put it together in the same room on the internet with all this technology we have. But we are here live on the YouTubes. Joining me as always is the 3 real stars of the show, Skip and Tosh, the real Eric Breen, and Nalo. Gentlemen, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking.
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Well, good. This has been a couple of delays that we've had to get around, but I'm glad we could all get together to do this fine book. For those of you who may be listening to after the fact, if this is your first stream, CriminalCast is a fan podcast style, played originally live on YouTube as a stream, and it's all devoted towards Ed Brubaker's independent works, which are mostly in the criminal branding line that he does with Sean Phillips, but he has got some other books that may or may not be a part of that as well, unofficially. But most of them, even the ones that are, distinctly not criminal, still have the same tones and feel. So it's basically, if you're a fan of one of those books, you're going to be a fan of them all because they're not just good, they're great. I think Ed Brubaker is probably, you could make a case that he's the strongest talent in the comics business right now. Do you guys have any comments on that to add?
I'm sorry, I was reading the chicanery in chat.
Oh, there's where the real entertainment is. Nalo, how about you? Ed Brubaker, you've been a fan longer than me. Just anything you want to say comes to your mind to talk about him, and also Sean Phillips, of course, his longtime art partner.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been into criminal a bit, I guess, or Ed Brubaker a bit longer than you, and I built up a bit of a hardcover collection. But I guess I wasn't as deep of a fan as I thought I was, because I recently found Ed Brubaker has a newsletter. And so you get that's where I was kind of getting some tidbits of info. I was telling you about how it was like originally going to be a trilogy in Reckless, and then now they keep going with it, and orders are going up with each. So if you're a real fan, you check out his newsletter. If you just Google Ed Brubaker newsletter. And I had a lot of fun when I was on vacation going back through them, because in each one he has like a section of like crazy crime stories, like real world ones. And can I just plug the craziest one I heard?
Yeah, go for it, man.
So it's this like story of this guy who in the 80s in maybe Colorado or something got like trapped in a blizzard in a snowbank and saw a plane passing overhead, so he used SOS with his like headlights. And there was like a sheriff on the plane who recognized the signal and called it in, and they were able to like rescue the guy.
Huh.
20, 30 years later, the guy's been pinned in his like 70s for a double homicide because 2 girls went missing and found up dead that night. And this retired cop, it didn't sit right with him, the story, and he was pursuing it all this time for free.
Weird.
Crazy.
So the guy was actually up in the mountains trying to escape his double murder. Got rescued by a flashlight without a plane saw him, and then got caught 30 years later.
Weird. Wow, that sounds something you'd read right out of one of his books.
Well, now you know where he gets his inspiration.
For sure. A lot of his stuff feels so real. Like when you read an Ed Brubaker book, I feel like he's just had so many life experiences that he's able to put in there. Eric, you've been a long time. You're one of the guys that got me to buy my first Ed Brubaker book, actually. What are your thoughts? Is he the best guy working in comics today?
Well, as you know, I detest indies, and okay. I was having this discussion with the guy I work for today, and he says right now it's James Tynion. And I said Ed Brubaker, but then I thought about it for a little bit, and I thought, okay, well, Tynan's got 3 books right now, and I'm not even counting Batman as one of them, that seems to have really captured the attention of comic book fans. So as we speak on August 18th, 2021, I guess that crown probably has to go to him. But Brubaker, to me, is the best because I am a fan of everything he's done. But I also realize, he might be doing so many other things. So the best comic book writer is probably Tynan because he's able to do 3 or 4 at a time, and the 3 indie books apparently are just all phenomenal. So I don't know if it's a vague answer, but let's put it this way. He doesn't have to take a backseat to very many people, if any. How's that?
Well, I haven't read all of Tynan's indie books, but Tynan has not written anything that I've come across. And I say this as a Tynan fan. I've been a Tynan fan for several years now. I was promoting him when he got put on the Batman job, and people were like, I don't know. He's one of the guys that I first latched onto when I got back into comics when DC was doing the New Age of Heroes and his Immortal Men. I was like, this James Tynan guy is really great. And everyone's like, whatever. Now he's the hot stuff because that's just the comics trends. As a fan of James Tynan, he hasn't come close to writing anything that Brubaker. Even Brubaker's worst indie book is better than anything Tynan. Brubaker feels to me that he's operating on another level. He's like when Jordan was in his prime, he just made other players look basic.
I'm not going to argue. I said, to me, he's the best writer working today. But one of the things that I've had this discussion, I said, I don't know what else he does while he's working on whatever it is he's doing, but I have to be impressed by the fact that Tynan can do 3 at a time. Because that was I said, Alan Moore could create masterpieces because he'd write 1 story a year.
Right.
And, so I don't know what else. For all I know, Brubaker might be working on 17 screenplays simultaneously. But he's not doing it in comics, so from just a comics perspective, it may not be him, but to me, he's the best comic book writer, working today, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Skip, my man, what sort of lavish praise do you want to give to Brubaker?
It's I mean, everyone else really touched on a lot of things and key points about him. For me, it is very basic. It goes back to one of the things that you had mentioned. I can just open up his stories and I can immediately just fall in. I don't know what it is about. I mean, I could even think about those, but I want to say I think the key thing is he has this magnetic appeal to his stories, and once you begin reading them, you instantly get drawn in, and then along the way, he does nothing but stay super consistent to making you feel like this is something you want to and need to see through to the end. His stories latch on to readers in a way that I don't see from very many artists, and I feel like, or very many writers, and I feel like those stories also stay latched, and possibly even latch more over the course of the story itself. So, and then of course Phillips, just you throw Phillips in there, Sean Phillips, and then it just kind of glues it all together. If Brubaker is the one that's latching on to you, then Phillips is the one that's applying a little bit of pressure and making sure no one's going anywhere. So it's anybody, we could never say enough about this duo and the books that they create. If anybody's hearing these words, the best praise that can be given is the feeling that you receive from experiencing one, if not as many of these stories as you possibly can.
Absolutely. I am so thankful that all 3 of you had to contribute to some level to get me to really kind of dive in, because I had been hearing about, Criminal, and the book is coming out, and I was like, I like the superhero books. I'm like, I appreciate good writing, but I was just like, I don't know, crime book. I'd rather just see a crime movie, watch a Quentin Tarantino movie or something. Like I was like, yeah, I'm sure it's fine. And I just didn't know. I didn't know. And then I think it might have been Eric who.
I learned by watching you.
I think it might have been Eric. Well, I mean, all of you to an extent, but someone got me to finally crack open the book for Pulp last year. And I was just like, oh, it's this good. And like I said, to me, look, there's other great writers out there. I'm not trying to besmirch any other. I'm not, like I said, I'm a fan of Tynan. And some of the people watching in chat are throwing out some of their favorites. I'm seeing people like Josh Williamson, Robert Venditti, Jeff Johns. They're good. But none of those guys, even like the stuff that I gawk over on some of those writers, there's something about Brubaker. Maybe it's just to me, I don't know. I can only see the world through my own lens, but he just hits notes at another level that no one else is doing, at least currently in comics. And every time I read one of these books, I close it and I'm just like, wow, And like this book tonight we're about to talk about, My Heroes Have Always Been Junkies. It wasn't what I expected, and that's another great thing about Brubaker, I think, is it doesn't feel paint by numbers ever. It just I don't know what I was expecting in this book, but this wasn't it, and this hit me like a sucker punch. Holy shit.
By the way, Zach voted 5 times.
Zach, well, there are many Zachs.
Just saying, that's
that whole family.
So, Ash, how surprised were you at the big reveal?
Not super surprised, but I mean, it did kind of surprise me. But then, as it was surprising me, I was kind of like, "This makes sense," and I was more of like, "Oh no, don't go there! No, what are you doing?" And just by the time it got to the last page, I was closed it up, and I just had to stop. And like I said, I felt like I was punched in the gut, and it was a weird feeling because on one hand, I didn't necessarily like it. This is not a feel-good story by any means. This, and all these things are subjective, so I think I have some personal, connection to this book that might have made it hit a lot harder for me than someone else. But man, I was just like, but also at the same time, one of the things I've always been a big proponent of in storytelling is make me feel something. For the longest time, I'm a big movie buff, and I think film is probably one of my favorite medium. And when a movie can stir emotion in you, whether it's laughter, crying, whatever, when it can move your emotions, it can take you on that journey, then it's doing something powerful. And sometimes a movie can entertain you because it just tells you a neat story and you're like, oh, it was a twist, I didn't see it coming, wow, fun. Or sometimes it can bedazzle you with spectacle, oh, Transformers are blowing stuff up, but when it can get and make you feel, and sometimes that feeling isn't pretty, and this book wasn't that way, but I can't help but respect it, and that's why I say writers like Brubaker on another level, because he didn't just bedazzle me with bullshit. He made me feel something. I walk away from this book and go, yeah, I feel like I have a new outlook on life, to a small extent. I mean, it's not like my life's changed, but it just, I don't know, it just resonates. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks. Thank you guys for joining me. Does anyone have anything? Before we dive in, this is kind of a shorter book. It's approximately 3 comic issues in length, so it won't take us too long to dive into it, and we'll talk about the story. But did anyone have any before we get to that part, anyone have any final comments, just related stories or just feelings or anything that they want to get off their chest?
Yeah, I can just say that I had read this when it first came out, and I appreciated it. But it maybe didn't resonate with me as much because I was just discovering, like, it was in my early criminal days. And so I hadn't read it in a while until we were planning this, and I guess in my memory I missed how much it actually is connected to not only Criminal but the first volume, and so I just commend the book for that on its
I
own.
commend CriminalCast for that, because that's I didn't catch it the first time either.
Yeah, somehow it's not like I didn't catch it. It's just like it didn't like mean that much to me at the time.
Definitely. We'll get to what you're saying. We'll try to remember to point it out so people would know. But one interesting thing I had got from just reading the trades, and I think we had covered this on maybe the first CriminalCast, when we covered all the different what the criminal books were. This is the official, unofficial Criminal Volume 8, according to what Ed Brubaker described when all the books. There's only 7 volumes of Criminal, but this book is essentially what he said, like a Volume 8. They just didn't label it Criminal for whatever reason.
There's actually a good reason.
What's the reason?
It's why the Cruel Summer is like its own book that's not like labeled.
Uh-huh.
They found that like just in general, it's like a psychology thing. So shops will just see like, oh, it's Criminal Volume 9. Like, yeah, I'll order a few. But and then there's no press, there's nothing. But when it's like Cruel Summer, everyone, they get a lot of press coverage and they get a lot of orders. So that's why they probably branded this as like its own thing.
Is it just like the volume thing? Like people don't like...
Oh, it's just like they don't get new press when it's just like Criminal Volume 9 announced. But when it's like Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, My Heroes Will Only Be Junkies, hardcover edition, it gets all this like buzz and press. And I read from the newsletter then like they're getting better orders off of, I guess, Cruel Summer, Bad Weekend, My Heroes Would Always Be Junkies, than like Criminal Volume 7.
Like basically taking off the number and giving it a dedicated name.
Yeah.
Gives a perception of one, that it's something new, like a new book from them, like a whole new series, and two, it separates it from the rest of the pack, so to speak. So even though they continue to happen in the same world, the perception is this is a brand new thing. Press wise, it in shop wise, it draws kind of like a bit of a new, the feel. I hate to. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say because it kind of cheapen it, but I think
it's just like
number one. Exactly. It's like a new number one.
Well, I mean, that does make some sense, especially, a lot of times readers, they don't want to jump in on Volume 9, right?
That's why I didn't buy Criminal number 5 originally.
Right.
Even though it said new story arc. I was like, but it's number 5.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And sometimes you're like, well, I want to start from the beginning. So that does make a lot of sense. I do wonder why they didn't have at least the branding, because it seems like the Criminal brand, like Cruel Summer, it's not a volume number. I guess technically you could say it's Volume 9, but it's just Criminal Cruel Summer. Or does it say Cruel? Maybe they did drop Criminal on that. I guess maybe I just knew it was a Criminal book, now that I think about it. But it did say Criminal in the floppy, so I guess, I don't know. I guess that's not terribly important. It was just something I was pondering.
Well, Skip, before we get into the summary, just because you're the most musically inclined, is there anything that resonated with this book with you from all the just past musical references?
Yeah, one very particular part, a reference to a very specific artist. And what I liked about it is I'm not very familiar with all of the artists, so the ties between it and of course the book drew me into it more. But just as much as I enjoyed the Joy Division reference that was in Cruel Summer, I do appreciate how Brubaker finds ways to make the things that he loves relevant in the stories, and not make them feel cheap or take you out of it. It is very much a part of the DNA of the story itself. So when we get to that part, I'll definitely mention it.
All right. So I guess one final thing before we do start, the little tradition here is what's everyone drinking? Tonight I'm drinking a beer, and I'm just about to start my water kick. I've decided I need to be a little healthier, and one of the keys to being healthy is drink water, not poison. So
Yes.
I got a big jug of water. Beer in moderation. You know, I usually don't drink more than one. I just drink it for the taste these days because I'm too old. But it's not that bad for you. What are you guys refreshing yourself with tonight?
I myself, again, being a little Ed Brubaker myself when it comes to our little liquid kick. Cool Blue, Gatorade, baby. Someone's got to keep these guys employed.
Yeah, man. The check's in the mail.
Know it.
Skips Gatorade sponsorship. I'm gonna
Pay
guess
me the big bucks.
I'm gonna guess Eric Breen is drinking a Coke Zero.
No.
No.
It's now more delicious. Jury's still out on that, but
More delicious what?
no, it says that on the can.
Oh, it's not.
They changed the can design, and I guess that makes it more delicious.
Oh, but it is Coke Zero. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I was shocked. I was like, wait a second, what?
I'm drinking whiskey.
Hey, you could drink water like me. It's a thing. People do it. What about you, Nalo?
Topo Chico.
What the heck is that?
It's like Mexican sparkling water.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I know what it is. But I don't think I'd ever heard it. I've seen it. I don't think I've ever heard it said out loud. So threw me for a second.
I think they have a new like marketing budget because I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yeah. Is it special? Like I saw it in the store and I was like, Mexican.
Well, I got
sparkling
one
water?
that comes with like it's like a lime twist, so it just
Oh,
kind of has
okay.
like lime flavor and it's sparkling. I mean, it's all right.
So I don't know how it is on the East Coast, but out here on the West Coast, with a large Hispanic population being 20 minutes away from the border, usually like grocery stores will have like a Mexican section, and then you'll find like the Mexican drinks that they all want. I guess it's separate. It's like you don't find them in the drink section. You gotta
Separate but equal.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, here's where the Mexican drinks are, and it's not just for the Mexican. There's like a little Jewish section too for kosher stuff, but whatever. And I saw the sparkling water, and I was like, really? Like, is it different? You can't drink Perrier or Canada Dry? Like, is the Mexican sparkling water?
I think it's just like really old. I think it's like really old, like a 200-year-old company or something.
Okay, I was just curious. Like, I was like, it just struck me because like some of the other drinks that I do like Mexican drinks. Like, I'm a big fan of tamarindo and stuff, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense. Like, this is an ethnic kind of drink that, but sparkling water in my mind is sparkling water. So I just thought it was weird. All right, I killed the live stream. Let's go on to my heroes have always been junkies. Take it away, Nalo.
Yeah, so I'm reading it in the deluxe edition, so I don't really know if there's chapters since this is a novella, but I'll just start us off and then
I don't
pause.
think there are. My paperback doesn't delineate.
All right, well, I'll just get started and then stop. And just one thing before I start. What is the main character's name?
Ellie.
How do we
Ellie.
Ellie. Let's call her
How do we
Ellie.
call her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes and
let's call
no.
her Ellie.
All right, so we open up on a beachfront, and I think something that in these first opening 3 pages stands out to me is that the coloring is much like brighter and pinker in this book than the underworld of Criminal. And it opens up on a beach, and we see Ellie looking pretty despondent and kind of like, I don't know, maybe high, staring out at the ocean and on the beach. And, someone comes up to them, like, basically asking if they're okay. And she just replies about like all these kind of like songs or bands. A song called C.V. Smith about a guy who dies swimming, and she just starts explaining to the stranger how she always thinks about swimming out there and dying every time she's here, and how beautiful people who commit suicide are. And someone who wrote that song had died, and the person's just like, are you sure you're okay? And we kind of just fade to black. And from there we open up like where the book primarily takes place, which is in a kind of I guess, private, expensive, like drug rehabilitation center. And we open up on the page where we just see Ellie is like yawning and bored to tears. And I guess everyone's talking about their addiction or when they realized they had a problem. And this one guy's going on and on about like how he got caught up in some crazy like drug raid or something and he was hiding under dead bodies. And she's just like, yeah, I can call this guy shit. It's way too specific. That's why he's here. He was blowing his money on other stuff and he lied to his wife that he was on drugs. That's why he's here. And the reason I know that is because he told it to skip. Skip. What do you have to say to yourself?
I mean, hey.
Yeah, why do you
people
get
like to spill
confessed
the beans to Skip? You know, it is what it is.
Well, let's hope Skip turns out all right.
Fingers crossed.
So we see already that Ellie has some sort of relationship to this character, Skip, and as we go more and more around the room, we kind of learn that Ellie knows so much about everyone because she's good at picking locks and actually stole the files to kind of get a sense of what she would be up against in her kind of containment, or I don't know what you call it. Funnily enough, on the next page I'm looking at, we learn the institution is called Infinite Horizons. Very vapor, very encouraging. And they say that, this like place for rich people. And she says, a few days ago, her uncle, in quotes, checked her in, paid all cash up front. And the last thing he said was, this is your last chance. So you kind of get the sense that Ellie is really, messed up and she's really has to achieve in this drug rehabilitation center. And we learn a bit more about Skip that, basically he's trying not to throw this away either. It's kind of his last chance. But, they're kind of into each other and she's like, I'm a pretty bad influence. When it comes to then, bringing everyone back to Earth and they're like, Ellie, what do you think? She immediately, starts quoting about Keith Richards and different kinds of things about, things from songs or rock and rolls. And she kind of like, gives everyone lip or doesn't take it, serious and just starts going on and on about, the Beach Boys and Pet Sounds and, kind of questioning the whole purpose of this rehabilitation center. And one of the themes of the book of, do you need drugs to actually, hit this level of creativity? Is all that we admire as great human art, required that you take drugs? And kind of her and Skip hit it off. Just think that was a lot of me talking, so I'm just going to pause for a second, see if anyone has anything else they want to call out or input.
Well, Ash, you were a known drug addict.
It's widely known.
I can speak to the authenticity of this rehab. Very much echoes my own experience. No, I'm just I've never been to rehab. I really I found this section of the book very amusing. So, like, not a lot in the greater scheme of things was really happening. You're just sort of getting introduced to these characters. And I think that Sean Phillips really elevates what could seemingly be kind of innocuous scenes of characters just sitting around circles talking about their feelings and drug experiences. But his artistry really brings out the character of these people, especially Ellie, who is the center of this book. If you're not invested in her, it's it's kind of make or break. And I immediately did. His renditions of her and her facial expressions drew me in. Every aspect of this character, even though there's a lot to not like about her, as we'll find out. She's captivating, and there was some really kind of funny scenes. Like, I just like this panel of her putting her fingers up to her head, and I liked Brubaker's style, that he has like this sort of like narrator, that Ellie kind of thinking this. You can get in like this monologue where it's like the pink boxes, and so we're listening to the characters talk in real time. and then we hear her brain as she's thinking about the scene that we're seeing. And then seeing the panels match with it, it's like almost like 3 different narrations happening at the same time. The visual, her inner monologue, and then of course the dialogue of the actual characters in the scene. And it's how they mix together, I found very amusing. Anyone else about this?
I just want to see if my mic's still messed up. No, apparently not.
Well, I
No,
just
what the
like
hell?
that, she clearly just doesn't give a crap about the rehabilitating, and you get a sense of just her glorification of drug addicts. Anything if you want to bring up before we keep going?
Yeah, I like how there's a like you get a strong sense, especially of who Ellie is right out the gate. Obviously, with her rebellious nature and her alternate take, like Nalo said, of drugs and their effects on people, and whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, and how society looks upon those people, especially like in different contexts, can praise their artistry, but also have disdain, for like their day-to-day activities and maybe how they treat people or just how they possibly potentially treat themselves. But above everything, it was a nice, sleek way to, get a sense of the atmosphere and then get a sense of who the main character is and then some of the secondary characters. And it's a perfect way to start that dynamic because the where it starts to where it ends is a true journey.
What do you guys think of the beginning here? Like it starts off so bright and airy, and the color palette, it's not only vibrant, but it's like the lightest of any of the Brubaker stories I've read so far. Like the criminal books in general usually are really dark, because it's seedy crime. This is just like, oh, it's on the beach and pastels and it's sunny and bright, and knowing where the book is gonna go, like I feel like that was by design to set the reader in a place of like tranquility and just joy. The character's a happy person, and it's just so the contrast between what I'm used to that really stood out to me.
This is my second favorite coloring job by Elizabeth Brettweiser, and I go back and forth between this one being my favorite one and the Fade Out being my favorite one. But like this scene kind of.
They killed.
Oh well, yeah. So like there's two. I have a lock screen picture and I have a little home picture. Lock screen picture is Assad Ribic, the Silver Surfer Requiem, and then the home page, it's Kill or Be Killed. So nice. I definitely got love for that. But with this particular thing, like you get the main character who, when you meet them, comes off a little delusional, but obviously is very much within her happy element. She is in a happy place, and that means more mentally than it does physically in the book, and we learn that especially later. But then when you go throughout the book, that's not the only place, because we start off with those bright colors, but then we have flashback scenes, and those are black and white, which to me like symbolizes a more simpler time where she lived in a time where things were black and white. She was a kid. Things were not as complex back then. And then you come to her in between time, and majority of the time that where we spend the story, those palettes are more complex, right, and a little more passionate, a little more heightened. So you go between like the happy place, the happiest place she can be now, you go to the happiest place that she had back in the past where things were in black and white and more simple. And then you got her tension in the middle of all that. And those color palettes lend to more tense, passionate, purples, reds, oranges types of things. So Elizabeth Brettweiser was at the top of her game in this book.
Right, that's exactly what I was trying to get at. Is it's more than just, hey, color these so that it looks good. Like, right, the coloring is part of the artistry. It's part of the telling of the story. It's subconsciously affecting your mood as you read the book according to what the design of the book, and the symbiosis of the Sean Phillips with her coloring and of course Ed Brubaker's great writing all together. It's just a fantastic package. Anyways, I don't want to monopolize the mic. We can go ahead. Unless Eric, do you have what did you think? Are you still testing your mic?
No, I'm wondering if the beginning, the brightness of the opening scene wasn't a clue of some sort as this story unfolds.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe the opening scene takes place at the end.
Maybe. It could.
Oh,
but,
well, we'll have to see. We'll get to...
She got out of the dark spaces and is finally...
Well, then again, as we're going to find out later in the story, that none of this may be what it seems.
Right.
Dun, dun, dun.
Ed Brubaker wouldn't ever do that.
No.
All right, so speaking of black and white scenes...
No Gabby Rivera.
Where we left off is we get our first black and white scene, and we learn about Ellie's, a little bit more about her relationship with music and how she had gotten her mother's things when she had passed away. So we understand that she grew up, not in a normal family structure, but had found this mixtape that was potentially made by her father. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it was something she really fell in love with and was extremely impactful to her character. And something that was just a extra fact of the matter was that every single artist on the tape was a junkie, or at least a drug addict.
It would have been tougher to make a mixtape of artists that weren't in that era.
Well, it might have been very like a gospel Christian music.
That is true. I think, but it is a point. The whole that the fact that everyone on that tape was an addict, because it kind of helps shape her views, which as she grows up, that drugs may not necessarily be a bad thing, and that it's enhanced a lot of people's lives. At least that's her perspective.
Yeah. So in the context of the story, and we'll get to it soon. She openly admits she has no interest in getting clean. So when we zoom back into the story, we find Ellie basically talking to one of the doctor's administrators, one-on-one, and basically because of her attitude in the group session, and this elder doctor is just like, it's so hard for me to watch someone like you wasting away your life. Ellie, I won't get into the thought bubbles here, but it's just, very analytical, very judgmental, very strategic, and we see she takes advantage of the situation by using the opportunity to basically steal her pack of cigarettes. So Ellie has gotten to level 1 of contraband, and she uses it to climb on the roof and go to the irresistible Skip and basically be like, hey, I want to hang out and smoke cigarettes with me in the woods? And he's like, sure. And we get this kind of like panel, very classic Sean Phillips of like this Skip guy like ripping a cigarette. Such great art, and we kind of get to learn more about them. She's kind of like understands he's into her, and she kind of likes that. And they're talking about how you're stuck here. You should probably just go through the motions. This place doesn't get any more fun. And she's just like, I have plenty of fun just telling them my opinion, like fuck doing anything. And this guy's like, you're headed straight to solitary, and he's like, no, I'm just messing with you. This place costs $5,000 a week. And she's just like thinking about how they're pretty into each other, and she's like asking him like, so you're just going through the motions? And he's like, pretty much. I'll just stay sober till I'm 21. I get like my grandparents money, and then I'll be able to do whatever I want. And she's like, yeah, he's gonna be leaving soon. We gotta figure out how we can potentially stick together. And from there we get another black and white scene. And here I want to ask if any of you guys have anything to add, because I don't particularly remember, since I reread it the other week, which artists they talk about here.
Oh yeah, so this in this particular part they cover a few. They're still talking about Billie Holiday because that was one of the artists that had kind of left the biggest impression, and this part was one of the parts that really harkens back to kind of her past, her mother, and even a little bit of the previous involvement, like well, more of her past. Let's just say that for now. But she was talking about how Billie Holiday, like was an addict and ended up dying on the hospital bed that she was on because she had narcotics had been found on her, and the police had told the hospital to stop administrating, aid to her basically, and how her father had died in a whites only hospital where he was refused treatment, and how when she was singing the song Strange Fruit, kind of like some of her sorrow and what made her voice even more soulful was the pain, of knowing what had happened to her father, and then of course tied with the irony of her dying in a not the exact same scenario, but still a similar fashion. And that was she could connect with that because her parents having passed away, which we find out a little bit more about that later. But those are the main artist spotlight in that particular spot.
Thanks for filling that hearted.
Got it.
So yeah, we just get kind of further, and definitely some of the art shows that these are like the glory days of her life, of like someone had mentioned simpler times. So when we get back to the main story, it's essentially Visitor's Day, and kind of our two main characters are singled out because they're essentially like the only ones without family visitors. And it looks like Skip has some sort of lawyer or attorney just talking to him about some paperwork, so they're kind of just left to their own devices. But Skip kind of closes up. He doesn't want to talk to her about like his life because they don't really know each other, but he's still like, hey, are we still going to be meeting up tonight? And she's like, I don't know. And she's like, am I just flirting or being cruel? Like, come on, you got to get it together. And we then cut to later in the evening. Ellie's out in the woods. We find that Skip does decide to come meet him. And here we get Ellie leveling up to level 2 contraband. So this time, instead of cigarettes, she got her hands on some weed vaporizer pen. And she uses some, clever peer pressure to say, like, come on, it's not really drugs, it's just weed. You got to do it. And he's like, making the calculations in his head, wondering if this is the thing that will push him off the ledge, telling himself just maybe take a hit, maybe 2. And I guess we learned to find that weed pens are stronger than Skip remembered. So they're pretty, high as a kite, I think is what they call it. And start talking about, stoner shit, existential philosophers, John Paul Sartre, and mescaline, and how when he took it, he just saw a lot of crabs falling around. I gotta just say, this little detail is, above and beyond that they're like drawing this like existential philosopher. And here, out of that, we kind of just get a bit more personal info about, Ellie's parents are dead. She doesn't really remember them. Her dad was a crook, or something to that effect. And he's like, my dad was a crook too. He used to be a lawyer, but a bad one. Now he's just an asshole. And we get a little bit inside of like people building up walls around themselves and etc. But this time she's able to do everything right, and they get like a sweet makeout sesh right up until they get caught. And we find out there's actually been a search patrol all around looking for them, and Skip is just like, oh shit. And we're moving on to another backflash there, but anything you guys have to say about this level 2 of contraband, going from cigarettes to weed just like that?
Those pens are really
cigarettes
strong.
are a real gateway drug.
Jeez, those pens, man, they'll knock you on your keister, let me tell you that.
Are you kidding?
No.
Okay.
But I mean, oh no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, this is more. We see more and more of her character being revealed and built upon, and we see Skip, and he obviously is into her, and she talks about how he was into her first, but she takes her time because people will show you who they want you to think that they are, but she knows throughout time they will reveal who they really are. And so she doesn't get butterflies and all that stuff out of the gate. She doesn't get that until later, and it's the reverse for most people. So even with that being the case, it's like his normal build up to what romance is, and then what her MO is to build up to, they're still coming at a part where they're starting to intersect. And I think she's a little more in over her head than she admits. She did say that she does like him, but as much as he's trying to, like hang on for the ride, there's a little bewilderment for her as well, as like for him, he's trying to follow her pace. For her, she's kind of following the pace of the circumstances that they're in. So both of them are trying to hold on to something, as like this journey, went from, a small stroll already, it's being, throttled, or I should say they're throttling it, and it's starting to accelerate, and maybe a little out of their handle.
And this page that's here on the screen, the left-hand side, that those who are watching live can see, this was a big foreshadowing page that I didn't realize until I get to the end of the book, and now knowing where it's going, I like how subtly Brubaker is able to throw stuff like that in there that seems on the surface like innocuous, like, oh, it makes sense. But then when you have context later, it reshapes what you were seeing. Eric, are you back yet?
I am.
Anything you have to say about this part of the book leading up to where we are?
Is anything as it seems?
Well, it's a Brubaker book, so no.
Listen, I'm gonna reserve most of my yapping for the end.
Okay. Just man, make sure you feel free to jump in anytime. Go ahead.
I was going to say something logistic wise, so go ahead first.
Oh, I'm just rambling, just filling the dead air. I just liked these scenes as we're describing the book at this point really are still sort of the character building scenes. There are a lot of, when you describe them, it feels just kind of like, oh, it's kind of boring. People sitting around the hospital talking, and from a descriptive sense, it very much is. But from a writing, when you're immersed in it and you're getting into these characters' heads and the way that the dialogue flows, it really helps you build this understanding and caring of these characters. These scenes where they go back in time and they talk about the music that meant so much, to this girl. It's tough to just talk about it, say, oh yeah, it's about Billie Holiday and this and blah, blah, blah. That sounds all kind of boring, but honestly, it really helps shape. And you can tell that Brubaker himself is probably a music fan to an extent, and these songs and these artists have some meaning, whether they're his favorite artists or maybe artists, from family members that meant something. You can feel like he's pulling from reality to shape these characters and like what it means, and he's pulling meaning from other artists to inform his own art, and I really like that. Malo?
All right. So after they get caught, we start with another kind of flashback style scene. And here we learn about kind of her caretaker, Jake, and how she asked, to go to Joshua Tree with him one time. And essentially what we learn from this flashback is, that she's actually has like some sort of obsessiveness around these drug addicts, even at this young age. And she had requested a specific room based off of where a certain rock star had overdosed, and knows a lot of information about overdosing, and even talks about how Winston Churchill was also an addict and everything. And you kind of get this sense that this Jake guy is just looking at her like he's almost embarrassed, and that he felt sorry for her because this isn't the kind of thing that a 12-year-old girl should be preoccupied with.
Yeah, and this character will matter. I didn't catch actually in the first time through. I think mostly because it was black and white. But this character will appear later, and I didn't actually connect the two. So
back to the action. We found out they have in fact been caught, and I guess even though this is a willy-nilly rich person retreat, they still have rules, and they have to take a drug test. And so Ellie's just like, I can already feel everything falling apart. But no matter that, she still sneaks back into Skip's room, and he's just like, what the hell are you doing? You got me to smoke cigarettes. You got me to smoke weed. And now I'm going to get sent to the army because I didn't succeed here. So go away, demon. And every woman is able to, not every woman, but many times in scenarios like this, they're able to disregard the current crisis by stripping naked. And so maybe that's contraband level number 3, because they're also not allowed to fornicate.
they're not allowed to have personal relationships. I mean, they can socialize, but they made a comment somewhere in the story about how they weren't supposed to have relationships in there due to the nature of their addictions and stuff. Anyway,
so she talks about society being a racket, and that's her mom made a lot of mistakes, but you shouldn't be punished for doing drugs, and fuck the army. Let's steal that guy Todd's car, who is lying about being a junkie, which I don't really understand how she got his car keys. And she's like, let's bust out of here together. Let's run away together, because I got you under my spell. I'm feeding you drugs. I'm feeding you sex. And now I'm taking you out of the institute, and you're escaping your life altogether. We got some hint about her mother, and in the next flashback scene, we kind of get a flashback about her mother that she calls a memory within a memory, and talking about how her mom ran these kind of addiction recovery therapy sessions, and remembering her, which kind of sad that as a little girl she even had to go to those things, but remembering that in the same night of her watching her mom give these kind of talks, she actually saw her mom doing heroin later in the night.
This is where the tragedy of the book starts to unfold, as you realize that child Ellie, when you start to see the connections of the storyline. My heroes have always been junkies, right? Everyone in her life, from her artists that she listened to while growing up, the music, they're all junkies, to her actual real parents, junkies. Her whole life has been influenced and informed by addiction, and and you're starting to see and while it's thus far it hasn't had any detrimental effect, she kind of lives this sort of carefree life, and she's just pop some pills here, smoke some weed there, maybe shoot up some hair. It's all fun and games, but we know in an Ed Brubaker world, eventually the games turn real. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt too much.
So back to the action. They steal Todd's car. They escape. They hit up some small town pharmacy, get more drugs, found a house with people on vacation, have more sex, do more drugs, and Skip is just, Skip is living on the edge. He's like, I never had a week like this, craziest of my life. And Ellie's like, you kidding me? One time I got kidnapped. And she's like, I was taken hostage, and he killed my mom, and this guy saved me. And she's like, is that who put you in the clinic? And she's like, no, he's in jail. I visit him on the holidays. And for her, it feels like a dream within a dream. And, things couldn't be better. They're high as and having sex. But when she goes out to run some errands, she realized, someone's following her in these black cars, basically criminals. And she's like, we got to get the hell out of here. She picks up the phone. She's like, tell them to back off. I'm doing it. And they just continue to escape. And they talk about, similarly to the Jean-Paul Sartre, that they have now a Van Gogh. So I don't know if he's a junkie, but just they're bringing in these different art styles randomly, with these kind of nods to different people. And they go to this town in Texas that's like a vacation village. So presumably the places are empty. And they just keep doing drugs, and they basically trying to figure out what to do. After going for a walk on the beach, they're really high, and Ellie's like, we could start to sell some of our drugs. We could sell to some teenagers. Maybe we can go rob your dad, And she's like, hey man, this is extremely sensitive. My dad's in witness protection for years. And if I'm missing, there's probably like, federal agents around or something. And they're like, why is he in witness protection? And they're like, I told you, he was like a crooked lawyer. I lost my whole life and friends. So just drop it. I became a junkie because of that. So just don't, I don't want to talk about it. And she's like, all right, well, if you think of something else, let me know, because we're out of money and we're on the run. And we get another flashback that's more about like her mom and her relationship with her, and idolizing more and more drug addicts. And we see that she is trying to start to sell drugs to just random people on the street. And these sketchy guys in the car are there, and all of a sudden, Ellie has a gun. It wasn't really clear to me how she obtained it, or if she just found it in the house. But she runs up to these people, and they're just like, look, there's a trial coming up. We're tired of waiting. The deal's up. Like, you don't have any more time. It's on now. Let's go. And she's just like, oh, Skip, you should have seen me the second you saw me coming. So I know that's not the end of the page exactly, but before we hit the high road of the rest of the last pages, any input on what we just saw?
Yeah, I think it all became pretty crystal clear at this point.
Absolutely.
But I'll get to that after we do the last couple pages. I'll give my
soliloquy. Right. Just wanted to pause for 1 second, just because there was a bunch of pages, and she's just like, you got to wake up. There's something I have to tell you. These guys, you have to do what they say, or else you won't get hurt. Just tell them where you find your dad, okay? She's like, I'm really, really sorry. And Skip is just screaming like, Ellie, and these guys are like, who the fuck is Ellie? And the other guy's putting on brass knuckles, and he's like, nobody. And here we find her inner monologue that her name is actually not Ellie, it's Angela. And then we see she's on the phone actually with Leo from Coward. And she's like, I got your protection again. The Aryans were going to kill you. I made it right. You saved me, so I saved you. I don't really know how to summarize the last 2 pages because it's like just like poetic text, but
yeah, it is. It's like a kind of a poetic scene, like we're just again informing kind of her character, talking about music that she listened to as a kid from her mom, and it's kind of abstract. And this is sort of like the epilogue because she throws Skip under the bus. And she totally betrays him, and it's all I just want
to say she's wearing the exact same thing as the opening pages, so I more than ever think that the end and the beginning are the same.
Yes, I'm glad that you actually brought that up because I didn't formulate that, and it actually it makes the original scene where she talks about what was it? Where she said she quotes a song lyric
about swimming into the ocean and killing herself, so she might feel so guilty about what she just did to Skip that she's actually like despondent and ready to swim out into the ocean.
Well, she said there was a line. There was like 4 words of the line, like I was waving. I wasn't waving. I was drowning, or something like that.
Yeah, I wasn't waving. I was drowning.
And man, now that you said that, I like this book even more because if this is the final scene, which I'm starting to believe you that it is she's the one who's not waving, she's drowning. And her whole life has just been stuck in the, well, since childhood, obviously. It's all been fun and games in a way. Like, she's just been lost in these addictions and just not ever facing reality. And it's no one could ever really save her, because no one thought she was drowning. She was just waving.
Yep.
Wow. just when you think you're like, oh, this is good, and then it's like, oh, here's a whole new level you didn't get.
Just when I thought I was out, they brought me back in.
Wow. Now I like this book way more. This book really hit me. Eric, you sounded like you had some you wanted to wait till the end. What are the things you wanted to get out?
Okay. She may or may not have been, a drug addict. That doesn't matter. She wasn't there because she had a problem. She was there to do a job.
Right.
She didn't just happen to come up with, the whatever pen. She had it all along. Her job was to get this kid fucked up enough to tell her where his dad was, because she was working for the guys that were going to kill Leo. So basically, she placed Leo. She owes Leo for saving her, and nothing else mattered. So she basically, let's be honest, she got Skip killed, and she got Skip's father killed. But none of that matters, because she did it to save her, I guess, de facto father figure, Leo. And at the end, she's just kind of sitting there going, yeah, what's next? I mean, I said, I don't know that there's anything more to it than that, because like I said, the whole thing was, she was in control, and her job was to make him lose control. And it's just like a classic Mata Hari, Black Wit, whatever you want to call it. She just engineered this kid's, end. I mean, so there's no feeling sorry for, Angela. She's a stone cold bitch. And, like I said, she sacrificed 2 people to save 1. I mean, I guess in her mind, Leo is more important, but, that's how I saw the story.
Definitely.
I think you're not necessarily wrong. I think she's not a case of being like a cold-hearted bitch, though. I think it's more of a case of reality check. It's like the way a child sees a world, why children can be unusually cruel, because they don't.
She wouldn't have had the gun that she pulled on him if she was that innocent. She knew what she was doing.
Well, she knew she was doing things to get information. I don't think that she knew, like, I think she was trying to do it her way, and I think she's playing an adult game, but she still has sort of that naivete that of what's really going on in the world, and she loses herself in drugs. So it's,
I'm not sure she was messed up at any point in the story, or if she was just playing at it. But you notice,
that's true. That's a good point.
For about the 6th time out of 10 of these, you and I come to completely different conclusions, and neither one of us knows for sure. That's what makes his.
At the end, when they're walking on the beach, Skip is visibly fucked up and says, "I'm so high," and she looks like stone cold sober.
But I think that's what makes Brubaker's writing so brilliant, is 2 people can come to the same different conclusions, and we may both be right.
No, you might. That's true. I didn't even think about the fact that we don't. I just was making assumptions, and I think that's the intent of the writer, is to throw you off. She's in a drug rehabilitation center, so obviously she's doing drugs or something. She's sneaking out, contraband. So obviously, but you're right. She could have been faking it all along, and there's no concrete proof either way. So it could be. I 100% agree. Just like this scene, the more I think about it now, the beginning, the more I'm agreeing with Nalo. This is the end of the story that we start at, and I really think this whole thing that she talks about, this song, swimming in the ocean, Yeah, I think that has something to do with her. Now, it doesn't excuse. I don't think she's, she should get off free. Just like all these criminal stories, like the characters kind of, they're not good people, but she's not diabolical. I think.
Well, yeah. See, I would say she is because the closest person to an innocent in the story is Skip,
for sure,
and she gets him killed because they're not letting him go after they find Dad. Let's be honest. So she got a quasi-innocent boy killed to protect a career criminal.
Agreed. But what I'm trying to say is my interpretation is that she's playing in the big kids section and she doesn't really understand the ramifications of what she's doing. I think when she's like, oh, just tell him what they want to know. It'll be fine. Like, I think she walks away thinking he's just going to get a little roughed up. Right? Like, that's what's going on in her brain.
And maybe when she says that, but when they basically start pulling him apart like taffy, I think she gets the message. And at the end of the story, I don't think she's all that broken up about it because she did what she felt she had to do.
So that's where I have a slightly different interpretation. I believed that, like, I had always believed that the beginning of the story was where the story ended, and that person that happened upon her as she was out there looking at the ocean, started to talk to her, and she spoke very delusional to him, and she was the one talking about that song and that particular part, that particular lyric, how not waving but drowning. And she had even mentioned that back then, and he had asked, like, "Are you okay, sweetie?" She was speaking very vaguely about committing suicide.
Yeah.
And then
My
towards
take
the end,
sorry, go ahead.
and then once we get to the end of the book, and then we're back in that moment, I think it's gone for, like, in the sense of time in the book, but as well as seeing her whole journey, seeing that she did get a innocent person who she did admit in the story that she gained feelings for, and now that we know, like, why it was such a bad idea that she did it. It wasn't because she was just a bad influence on him. That's a lot more innocent. It was because she was going to feel a certain way if things didn't go according to plan. Her plan was to get the information from him or to go to his dad's house. They would rob it together. They would get the money that they needed, and then she would turn over the money in place of turning him over. But he didn't want to go, and she didn't want to push him past that point. And then time constraints got squeezed. That was part of the circumstances of the story.
Yep.
She was told earlier that she had more time, and then they're like, hey, this is the new timetable now. I think they said that this is what it is or something like that. So they had less time, and that's when they, basically were just going to move him on him, and they did. So she got a person that she started to get interested in, started to have feelings for. They slept together, all of that stuff. She got him killed, and she took care of Teague. That was like her to-do list, right? Or not Teague, Leo. Hey, Leo, I got you covered. You saved my life, I save yours. But she got another life killed, and she's out at the beach, just like going through everything, going over her life, seeing that it was just filled with junkies, making the most of it, and then accepting the fact that she doesn't want to go on anymore. She is affected by her whole entire past, and she just got an innocent person killed to save someone who saved her when she was younger. She's about to walk out into that ocean, not waving but drowning. So yeah, we have the whole part of her whole life has been that, though she maybe had appeared to be a happy-go-lucky kid and she's making the most of the terrible scenarios that she was in, she wasn't waving that whole time. She was drowning, and now she's about to literally go drown herself. And be done
My
with it.
interpretation is that the last panel is pretty clear that she's walking into the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
See, now I that all good points, but I look at that last panel and I just see I see a stone cold, maybe not killer, but I just nothing there. So I don't think she's going to go out into the ocean. I think and you can look at that one of two ways. She's either fine with it, like because there's not like a little tear or anything like that. There's no expression. So it's like, it's one of those ambiguous endings. What's she going to do? Because you can look at it and say, okay, she doesn't feel a thing, Or
Well, you
like-
do have the benefit of the monologue, the internal monologue, which informs you what's going on through her brain. So
Yeah, but-
this is not the monologue of a stone cold killer, right? This is a stone cold killer is just like, well, got to forget him. He was just another tool in my, she's and this scene here too, on the lower left panel when she's walking away and he's like,
You get that
Ellie.
classic female shrug from Phillips. Shoulder action.
This is a despondent person. I don't think she's acting. And I think this is a great thing about Phillips helping to inform the story, because if that art had been bad and you couldn't really understand, it would make the message unclear. How does she really feel?
And to Breen, we get when she first uses her real name Angela, she's like, "What did you do?" And she's like completely like on the ready to kill
Right.
herself.
I don't know.
And I also think, obviously, Leo knows her, right? So I don't think.
Well, yeah, she's the little girl from the bar.
Right, but I don't think Leo is just gonna be so caring about just some cold bitch that just fucking kills people. I'm not telling you you're wrong, Eric. My take though is that she used someone who's way in over her head, living this carefree lifestyle, and she got him killed because she was naive and stupid and trying to do something that she had no business doing, getting involved with really bad people. And, when she pulls the gun out to stop them at the Quickie Mart or whatever, you can tell she's like, doesn't want this to happen. If she was a stone cold killer, she'd be like, all right, do what you have to do. I don't give a shit about him.
I'm actually coming around on that part of it. But I'm not sure I'm going to buy that she's going to walk out into the ocean. I think she's kind of at that crossroads.
I would say that I only coming to that conclusion on my third reading. I only on my second reading saw how heavily it connects to criminal. So it's not like I read this the first 2 times and I was like, suicide.
No,
It's
I know.
kind of
I
for
said
me
that's
only out of this discussion. I'm agreeing with what Skip said, especially how it does look like she's hitting her checklist. She's like, all right, I called Leo. You got your protection. What the hell did I just do? I'm going to go not wave, but drown.
or she's going to turn around and just go back to whatever it was that she has become. So I said, again, it's one of those,
But she's really only become a person doing jobs for the mob. So it's not really, doesn't seem like she wants to continue doing that.
well, again, it's another example of everybody in Brubaker's stories are broken to various degrees.
Well, remember though that
And-
that black guy was the guy that was like kind of her guardian because her parents were killed, so she was raised by like effed up people.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. I said,
So
I
she
said
doesn't
there-
have a
yeah.
choice. So she's kind of like, and when they come to kill him, it's like she can't fight those guys off. And I think that's my take on that scene was like, oh fuck, like, I
I
thought
thought the bartender raised her.
yeah, I got confused on this part, and maybe you guys can help clear that because
Well,
I think
let's talk about a little bit of that. Let's go ahead and kind of let's break that egg open. So she is a character that appeared in a past criminal story.
Yes.
well,
That was
as
the
a
big
very
reveal
little
I was
girl.
talking about.
Yep, exactly, and
So-
one that we covered here.
So is this
Yeah.
guy here not Chester?
No.
See, that was what confused me because, and I don't want to. I know I'm gonna get.
If Chester's the bartender, no.
I'm
these are
gonna
just
I'm
two-
gonna get lambasted here for saying all black people look the same, but the art is like I was like, is this the same character? Because the white guy is the guy that committed her to the hospital in the beginning.
Right, but that's placing her there.
I thought, Breen and Skip, that it was the Chester. I thought this was the bartender.
Gnarly.
I thought if whatever
The
if they were
the
using
bartender
wrong
from
name, it was
Undertow, right?
because they were using the wrong name for her anyway or something.
And
You're
it's
talking about the bartender from the Undertow in Coward?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that she was left with, and we
So-
see in a different series, not Coward, that she's still with him, working the bar.
Okay, so in the dialogue,
they gave him a different name because his name is Gnarly and Coward in the other part, but he's Jake in this.
He's Jake in this, but
So
couldn't.
maybe, or at least a nickname.
But I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, probably.
Well, why not? Because she's living with him in the different series outside of Coward. When
Okay, for one thing, the bartender's a lot bigger than this guy.
Gnarly was bigger. That's true.
But it's like if my only point is like if she's not with the bartender, like why make it a character that visually is quite close?
Well, there was, remember in the other series there was, a black dude was one of the killers in one of the other stories. So I don't know if it's the same guy, because I'm trying to place the bald guy with the mustache standing next to him. I just think there are a couple of mobsters that are looking for his dad. But and I said it's some old white guy that drops her off.
Is this not? That's not the guy, because I think
no.
My interpretation was they don't
He's
show
not
his
even
face.
bald. He's not bald though. You can
No,
see it.
it's a different guy altogether.
Okay, he's not bald.
But
That's
again,
okay.
like I said, that might be that was part of her cover, was to go in there to get close to Skip.
See, I just made the assumption, and you're right. If he's not bald, but it's close, like, because you see this guy's wearing a black. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and Ash, don't feel bad. Skip can't tell us apart either.
It's true. I thought you were the same people.
Well, yeah, we are interchangeable.
Well, to be fair,
Yeah.
I just mistaked
Fair.
two white people as well. So,
So what you're saying is she's just
I just
stupid.
can't tell anyone apart. Yeah, I'm stupid.
Well, I don't know, like if we'll come to a conclusion, but just intuitively, I assume that Jake is the guy from the bar, Undertow.
Yeah,
we see
I still
we
feel
see
that way
her
too.
in a series that's not Coward, still
Yeah.
at the Undertow,
Right.
and it's a black guy who's muscular. Maybe he's drawn bigger, but if we see a third time she's like young and with someone looking like that, I would find it weird that she magically, as like a young white girl, switched black guy foster parents.
Well, I think we can all agree this was a hell of a story.
It was, and I'm
So,
glad
yeah.
I got to do this show with you guys, because there are parts of it that I did not grasp, like the Nalo, man, pointing out the end scene like this. Like, I just was like, oh, it kind of ended on the beach like it started, but I didn't realize that it was like the same scene. I just thought it was like a poetic end where you start, go back to the beach, and now it makes so much more sense. And I think, honestly, she may be going out to drown herself potentially, but the waving and drowning thing, I kind of still interpret that it's her, like a metaphorical sense, right? That she's reaching out, and like a lot of people that are addicts, and I still kind of do think she is an addict of sorts. Even though you're right, someone pointed out that we don't see her truly doing anything other than like smoke a cigarette, or take a puff of a vape pen. I think she's leads a troubled life, and she's, and even like suicidal people, right? A lot of times there's two types of suicidal people, right? There's the kind who just like, I just really want to kill myself because I can't stand living. And there's the kind that I want to be saved. My life sucks and I can't do anything about it, and I'm going to kill myself, and hopefully someone will save me before I do, because that's what I really want.
Well, I know when I read this the first time, I almost didn't get this, because I saw this and I wasn't completely immersed in Brubaker at the time. And I go, what's this got to do with the other stuff that I've read, that the criminal stuff? So I got it, and I said, and since we hadn't started doing CriminalCast yet, because I've read so many comics, and I'm old and my brain has turned to mush, I just completely missed that was Leo from a book I'd already read. And it was us doing these, which made the light go on the second time. But I'm glad we did this too, because again, even a book that I really didn't remember as being all that great as far as measuring up to the rest of them, I realized, no, this does. And that's something that doing these shows has, awakened in, me, as far as like connecting all these dots. And man, I said this was, I'm really glad we did this. Great story.
Yeah,
Hell
and
yeah.
and you bring up a good point too about the sort of the ambiguity in his storytelling and how you interpret something different than I do. And I really do truly love that, because I like hearing the different interpretations and go, oh, well, and sometimes it stirs me to go, you know what, actually you might be right. Like maybe that is the right way. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I go, I still think it's this way. But I really do love that it's not just 100% concrete, because that's like kind of bad writing, right? When the writer has to tell you, this is what I'm trying to say, that I have to sort of dig and I have to think about it. I love being challenged by a writer. I don't like having to think about it because the writing is so bad that I have to like put the pieces together itself. I like doing it because the writing is so good that I don't fully appreciate the complexity and the sophistication of it without doing some thoughts and discussion like we're doing now.
Well, and like to your point, you changed my way of thinking on how bad a person she was. I still think she's a bad person.
Yeah,
but
I think she's bad. I just for different reasons.
I don't think bad. Yes, I don't think she's quite as soulless as I thought when I finished the book. So again, that's a great thing about these books, is we can discuss them and actually, alter our perceptions a little bit, if not our whole take on something, which, because there's so much, nuance or room for interpretation that it's sort of like, the three blind, and maybe we're all right.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. We are all right. In passing, that Angela drowned, or, Angela might show up somewhere. So what I like about Brubaker is it's this very loose continuity canon, but you learn about characters as them just popping up for a second in other books, which is very nice. And here we get an update that Leo is, still living a criminal life, even though he's in jail, and he's, affecting things in the outside world to get protection from the Aryans.
Or we might learn that Angela gets traded to Marvel and she one-punches Galactus.
Well, I heard Angela is starting a Substack to write about her junkie.
Oh man, and let's also not forget, she is still I would assume, we don't ever get to hear her age in this book, but we do get to hear that Skip is 18, and I'm gonna assume her age is roughly equivalent.
I would say 18, because they even in these kind of books, he's probably not going to write like a 16-year-old girl, banging a technically an adult, even though we all did it in high school.
Right, but more the opposite too. I don't think she's like a 30-year-old girl. Like
right, she's 18 tops, I would guess.
Right, so that plays into my argument about her just sort of being naive and like a stupid girl. Not a good, like, she's still got some bad things. She's done bad things, but I think a lot of it is just, part of it is that
that's true.
She's playing in the adult pool, like she didn't know what she was really doing, and she got a hard lesson at the end.
18 in Brubaker years is a lot older.
Well, yeah, but
but yeah, I get your point there.
So, all right. Well, I like this book a lot more. I'm so glad, and that next time I read it, I'll have way better comprehension of it. But I mean, I liked it the first time, so that says good things. So, what are we doing next? What should we tackle? Does anyone in the audience, by the way, have any opinions?
One of the not Ricky. Who's the other lawless brother?
Tracy.
I don't think we did that with Ash. Any of the Tracy lawless focus stories, so maybe that.
The only criminals we've done so far are Coward and Lawless, and we did Cruel Summer. But so the rest of these, I think we should do another criminal book.
I think basically the first one that focuses on Tracy Lawless, where he comes back to avenge Ricky Lawless dying.
Well, I don't know which ones those are, but I just figured we would just kind of. We don't have to, but I just figured we would kind of go in order.
We haven't yet.
Yeah, we haven't got an order.
Well, we did.
It kind of makes it more fun because he doesn't write them in order.
That's true. You can read any of these books in any order you want.
Yeah.
But I just figured for the sake of whatever, the continuity of when they were written.
Well, we should have started that in the beginning then.
Well, I did suggest it, but I didn't want to, you guys wanted to jump around for some other books. And like I said, we don't have to. It also makes it easier to remember which ones we've done because I can just see the list and go, we're on the fourth one. Instead of being like, wait a minute, which ones do we have?
Does that one have a title, Nalo?
Yeah, Lawless. Volume 2.
We did Lawless. So Dead and the Dying would be the third volume we haven't done.
Is that the Tracy Lawless one?
No.
Tracy Lawless is Lawless. We did.
Oh, we did that one.
Oh, okay, we did that. That's right, we did.
Yeah.
Well, we can do Dead of the Dying because I recently got all the floppies.
Okay, because I'm missing one volume, and that'll give me time to find it if I don't have it. So the Dead and the Dying is what we're doing.
That would be my nomination. Now we do have 2 really large Brubaker books to consider at some point in the future. FATALE and Kill or Be Killed are both. FATALE is was 5 volumes, and Kill or Be Killed is 4 or 5.
I think it's 4.
Well, should we?
It's 4. It's listed as 4 here, but this is in the print of this book, so maybe at the time of the printing, because like Cruel Summer's not listed here, so I don't know if was a volume after this, but I know Kill or Be Killed is pretty big. So my point being is to consider. I believe if we do a FATALE book or a Kill or Be Killed book, we should do it like we did before, where we just keep going until we finish it and don't break it up.
I agree.
So that's going to be a 5 or a 4 week commitment when we do get to those. So think about that. But my nomination would be Dead and the Dying. If anyone's in the audience,
I'm going to second that, and then hit maybe FATALE after that.
I'm gonna bow out if we do FATALE.
Wow.
Why is that?
I just don't want to. I don't know. Just not feeling it.
Well, I'm down to do Dead and the Dying next. Cool.
Okay, so 2 weeks. Does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah, that works for me.
Actually, okay. Let me. Yeah, I can order it if I have to and get it in a couple of days. So yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
If I don't have it.
So guys, in 2 weeks we'll come back on this channel and we'll talk about Dead and the Dying. Pick them up, guys. You can get them digitally in Comixology if you don't have a store near you or just don't care. And they're worth it. This is the best stuff. If you're not reading it, I don't know why you're listening to us. I'm assuming you guys all have these books. Reread them if you've already read them. Come back. Would love to see the participation in the chat. Due to the nature of this, because I know it's going on a podcast, I don't interact too much with the chats on this because, I don't know, just podcasts don't want to listen to it afterwards and be like, oh, I don't get to see any of this stuff. But we do definitely read it, and it's important to us, and it informs our discussion. So I hope you guys are enjoying as much as I do. I'll give some final words. Eric, any final things you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I think I've said what I need to say.
All right. And how about you, Nalo?
I'm good. Thanks. This was really a great discussion. I think we went deeper than most of the other books. And I think that trying to even just do the summaries, I realize it's quite a dense book, even though it's quite short. So great to discuss it with you all.
Yeah, this is awesome. And Skip, you know what to do. Give you the final words, and you can say the final goodnight to send us off.
Sounds good. I watched the interview with Ed Brubaker, and I read a few as well. So he was actually the child in his family. His mother had some addiction, so he was going with her to those meetings, and that's where that portion of the story was kind of inspired from. And then as well as knowing some other people and such that were addicts, like meeting them, from the meetings that his mother would go to and other things. So it was a little bit of that perspective. And then he was also like a bit of an army brat. They moved around a lot. So the whole thing of like the energy of like the new kid coming in, kind of spicing things up, kind of how Ellie, aka Angela, did by coming into the rehab center. Was a little bit from his experience as well. He had some other interesting things to say. If you guys check out the interview that he did with, I believe it was Entertainment Weekly, and you'll get some really interesting tidbits about this book and just Ed Brubaker in general. Other than that, thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to be here in 2 weeks when we cover the dead and the dying. Other than that, thanks for coming out. God bless you. Good night.
Right, kids.